Donald Trump is talking about refusing to bail out the post office. Why is the post office having a problem here? In part because first class mail is drying up as a business right now. And catalogs and whatnot also somewhat diminishing. And deliveries are on the rise, and maybe they're not charging enough to Amazon and these companies. But the main drag on the post office has been building since 2006. And I've talked about this many times on the program over the years. In 2006, a Republican-controlled Congress passed the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act, signed into law by George W. Bush. The Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act of 2006 required the post office, postal service, and just to be clear, the Postal Service has never relied on tax dollars, or prior to this, 2006, it never relied on tax dollars whatsoever. Fully funded by stamps. Now, they don't have the ability to increase the price of stamps without Congress signing off. They have the ability to do really anything without Congress signing off from it. So they're constrained as an operating entity in many, many ways that other companies are not, but they still functioned to provide a service that the market could never and would never provide. There is no way I'm going to start a delivery business that is going to charge the same amount for a first class letter delivered in a high density area like New York City and out where, Matt's cousins live in North Dakota. There's no way I'm going to charge 42 cents for both those activities if I'm the private market. No way. I'm willing to deliver that letter to Matt's cousins for, I don't know, $16. But I ain't going to do it for 42. It's an incredibly, not only egalitarian service, but it's a crucial one. Because people out in North Dakota, they're not going to pay $16 for that letter. So you have them fully funded by their own stamps. The Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act is passed, and it forces the Postal Service, and there's no rationale to this because there's not a single company in the country, maybe in the world, who has this obligation. There's not a single agency or enterprise in the country, governmental or otherwise, that has this obligation. It's completely bizarre. It required the Postal Service to calculate all of its likely pension costs over the next 75 years for workers for the Postal Office who are still decades out from being born. And then save enough between 2007 and 2016 to cover most of them. In other words, you've got to pre-fund pension costs for people who are working at your company who are not even born yet, your agency, your organization, that are decades away from being born. No one has that obligation. Why did they do this? So that they would weaken the postal office, so that over time, maybe it would take 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, it would become weak enough that some Republican president down the road could pull the plug on it and just privatize the whole thing. Well, they also got lucky because with this economic and medical shock with coronavirus, now they're in a big hole. And they are looking for a bailout like we gave to the airlines, like we've given to corporate America, like we've given to every aspect of society. But they don't want to do it to the postal office. Now, I suspect that this is just a negotiation by Donald Trump. Postal Service is losing $2 billion a month through the coronavirus recession. They are incredibly crucial right now. Lawmakers already agreed on a $13 billion grant to the Postal Service, for which they would not have to repay. Mnuchin blocked it. So only a $10 billion loan to the Postal Service made it into the legislation that passed. But Trump is threatening to veto the CARES Act if it has the postal agency getting any money. And he is somehow blocking the emergency funding. I think he's full of it. I think this is basically designed to make it look like this is going to be a concession he makes to the Democrats. So the Democrats, who have been incredibly weak throughout phase 3 and are teeing up weakness in phase 4, avoiding asking for things like voter protection. All they're doing is asking for stuff that the Trump administration wants to spend money on anyways. If Donald Trump kills the post office, ladies and gentlemen, there will be a revolt in this country like you can't even believe, by his own voters. In New York City, we're still going to have some form of delivery. We're so dense. In the Northeast, things are so dense that you could replace the service. It'd be more expensive. You can't send it to everywhere. But places in the Midwest, places in the South, rural areas, Donald Trump is just posturing right now. The Democrats should just say, Donald Trump owns this. He wants to destroy the post office. We will bring it back. Day one, we will build it. We will bring it back. We will rehire every postal worker there is. He will pay the unemployment for all the postal workers that will go off, and then we will hire every postal worker when he returns. In the meantime, we want voter protections. This is the way the Democrats should be playing this, but they are so afraid. It's not even ideological. They're so afraid. It's not even about power. If you wanted to maintain your power to push your neoliberal agenda, then get voters to vote you in. It's just that they are just operating under a completely archaic political perspective. Our leaders are just ossified in their thinking. It's stunning. In fact, not only should Joe Biden say, and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer should say, the post office is on you. It's on the Republicans. We've passed this. We would like to give them a grant. We want to continue the post office. We're going to rehire everybody, and we're going to add postal banking. If we had postal banking in this country right now, the ability for the post office to be a mechanism in which to provide emergency funding to Americans could be flicked on like that. Every post office could deliver a card to somebody. But we don't. That's also a failure of Democrats, frankly, at the time. I mean, there are all these instruments that don't sound that sexy that can be used in a way to build out all the things you would want from a greater social welfare state. But the Democrats have failed time and time again to implement these things. Sometimes I think it's ideological. Other times I think it's just sheer incompetence, sheer temerity. It's ridiculous.